Welcome. France has experienced its hottest day on record, and the heat wave is not over yet. Today, 58 departments are under a rare red alert for extreme heat. That is 4 more than yesterday. Some schools are saying shut, while hospitals and the transport network here are under significant pressure. The heat wave has also left around 60,000 households without power this Wednesday. Well, our reporter, James Andre, has been braving the sun this afternoon. He's at the Canal Saint-Martin in the east of Paris, where authorities have officially given people the green light to take a dip in the water. He joins me now on the programme. James, tell us a bit then about the atmosphere where you are, because obviously people want to stay cool on this very hot day, but there have been dozens of tragic cases in France of people dying because of drowning in the past week.
Yes, absolutely. Over 42 people have died in the past week due to drowning because they were trying to, take a dip in places which are either dangerous or not allowed. And actually, it was not allowed here at the Canal Saint-Martin. Just yesterday, the police was doing rounds here and indeed handing tickets to those who were actually swimming. Well, as you can see today, that atmosphere has radically changed. The decision has been made to make it allowed to have a swim in this specific part of the Canal Saint-Martin. Now, the water is being tested every morning. The authorities have said that they would close this place down if ever water quality was not adequate. It is obviously not allowed to jump off bridges, but still, as you can see, a lot of Parisians are taking advantage of this opportunity to cool down. And you will have the same thing across Paris in the fountains in various places, with everybody waiting for the big opening of Paris Plage. That's on the 4th of July, and there will be many more places where people can actually have a swim. What the authorities have been saying when it comes to swimming is, beware of currents in rivers. There have been cases of people falling to their death and drowning after jumping off a bridge 4 meters above a river. So that, of course, is incredibly dangerous as well. So it's very, very important to make sure that people are swimming in places that are allowed. Here, the decision was simply made to open up because, it was impossible to contain people who just wanted to freshen up and cool down.
And look, James, this is not just extreme weather. This is unprecedented, the kind of temperatures we're talking about here in France. And that's why the government has been holding these emergency meetings every day, I believe, this week. Tell us a little bit about what they've agreed so far, what's being discussed today.
Yes, well, indeed, the government is under considerable pressure. To give you an idea, in 2003 there was a terrible heat wave in France that killed 15,000 people, and that has stayed a trauma in the French society. Well, at the worst day of that peak temperature, the peak temperature at night, the coolest moment in the night was 25.5 degrees. Well, last night it was 27 degrees. That gives you an idea of how violent this heat wave is. And of course, this is causing a host of problems, ranging from obviously elderly people overheating in retirement homes to classrooms being closed. About 8,000 of them are closed today. And then this morning, Maud Brejon, the spokesperson for the government, announced on BFM here, a national information television, that there would be a plan in order to adapt air conditioning to classrooms and other places, saying basically that what the state wants to implement is targeted implementation of air cons in the places where it is absolutely required. So that's one part of the plan. And then, of course, there are problems when it comes to the hospitals that have started a plan to face what they have as large numbers of people and large influx of people who are simply overheating. And then you have the power grid. Nearly 60,000 people have no electricity right now in Brittany, simply because the installations have overheated. You have also electricity production with nuclear plants that have been slowed down in order to not overheat the rivers that cool them. So yes, we have a very tense situation and the government very much under pressure. This morning, Emmanuel Macron came out of the cabinet meeting saying that there was a need for a plan to respond and adapt in years to come, because of course, what everybody is frightened here is that this may very well be the new normal when we already had a heat wave in May.
All right, thank you so much. James Andre reporting for us there from the Canal Saint-Martin. Well, Emmanuel Macron there, as James was saying, talking about the need to adapt and respond. To talk about this a little bit more, Professor Ian Williams is with me. He's an applied professor of environmental science at the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. He joins us from there. Hello to you, and thanks for speaking to us on France 24.
Hello, Nadia. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you on a very important topic, of course.
It's an important topic indeed, and one of those reasons is that this continent is warming at twice the global average. So is it fair to say, as James, our reporter, just said, that actually this is kind of a new normal in Europe now?
Oh, for certain, it's a new normal. Scientists have demonstrated that if we didn't have climate change, then we wouldn't be in this situation where we're getting these recurring extreme heat waves probably every 3 years now. And it's not going to stop anytime soon until we reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Okay, reducing carbon dioxide is obviously a long-term goal. There is no quick fix there when it comes to climate change measures. So this summer, this heat wave, can you give us a sense of how individuals should be trying to keep themselves as cool as possible and safe?
Well, the first thing to do is to get out of the heat. You need to be indoors. You need to be pulling your curtains to keep the heat out. You need to keep yourself hydrated. You need to keep an eye on vulnerable people. So obviously the infants, children, the elderly. We need to keep very close surveillance on people in care homes and so on. And there are weather warnings that are out there. France, as a result of the catastrophic incident that happened in 2003, is probably the best prepared nation in Europe for heat waves. So I know your previous reporter talked about your president being under pressure, but actually France is probably the best prepared country in Europe for recurring heat waves because you have a plan, a national heat plan. The United Kingdom and the majority of other countries don't do that. But the kind of simple things I've just described is the way forward for people during this heat wave.
And when we look at this then at the policy level, you say France is actually better prepared than some of its neighbours. How do you think government should go about balancing those needs of protecting vulnerable populations through, for example, making sure that more people can have access to air conditioning, while also ensuring that some of these policies are as ecologically sound as possible, as green as possible, given that obviously one of the big reasons why we have this heat wave is because of climate change, and things like AC can only make that worse?
Yes, you're quite right with everything you just said there. So let's look at what France did. As a result of the 2003 disaster, the French government probably put in place the strongest policies of anywhere in Europe to reduce heat impacts. It put national heat health action plans in place. It's got warning systems in place. It's got heat health surveillance. It's created registers of vulnerable residents, and there's a lot more coordination between the different agencies. But the simple fact of the matter, even though France has done all these things, the best comprehensive heat governance plan in Europe, the fact that we have such extraordinary climate change means that we're getting heat extremes, particularly in urban areas where you've got dark roofs, asphalt surfaces, concrete, which absorb heat and then re-radiate it at night. So the biggest problem we face is that we're not just hot during the day, we can't recover at night because it remains hot at night. So there's a huge number of things that the French have done, which other countries are well behind. The sort of things that can be done quickly, effectively, and cost effectively, to answer the second part of your question, is a lot more external shading. So external shutters, blinds, and shading devices, including trees. A lot more urban trees and green infrastructure, including small pockets of trees and shaded public spaces. We can put reflective roofs and surfaces on our buildings, and we can encourage passive cooling measures. The heat health warnings, very important. But in places like hospitals and schools and housing where there's lots of apartments, you don't have to do a full building air conditioning, for example, which, as you say, will just increase electricity demand and drive even more emissions. What you can do is have a designated cooled refuge space in an individual building or in a hospital or a care home, which is designed to protect the most vulnerable at a modest cost. So all of those things are relatively easy to implement and relatively cheap to implement.
It's interesting that you say that France is ahead of a number of other European countries on this. I mean, that isn't the impression that we have, particularly here in France at the moment, given the pressures, as we say, on infrastructure, on schools, etc. Given that you're in the United Kingdom, I mean, does it seem that it's that much worse there? The UK also clearly is not a country that has a history of extreme heat like this. In your view, have the governments there not managed to adapt to this new normal?
Oh, not at all. So the United Kingdom, I mean, obviously is traditionally a colder country than France, especially the southern and central parts of France. So the UK, as a public, as a government, has typically historically viewed heat as an occasional inconvenience rather than as a major public safety threat. So we very rarely exceed 38, 39 degrees C. And you've been at 44 degrees C in the last few days in France. So we only exceeded 40 degrees C for the first time last year. And that was a real wake-up call, especially when parts of London suffered wildfires that set houses on fire. We'd never experienced that before. Whereas that sort of occurrence in southern Europe is much more common. We've also got a very old housing stock. I mean, very old housing stock going back to the 1870s, 1880s. And these are totally designed to keep heat in, not to keep people cool during summer months. And our schools and hospitals and care homes, they don't have aircon. They don't have mechanical cooling systems. They don't have passive cooling measures. So although we've got a climate change commission that has actually said we must do all of this, we haven't done any of it. And part of that is because of our weird politics at the moment, where you've got one half of the politicians saying we have to take more immediate action about climate change, and the other half saying, well, actually, net zero is a waste of time. And so while you've got this weird politics going on, the public are very confused.
We have time, unfortunately, for just one last question, about a minute or so. Let's talk about El Nino then. Let's just zoom out finally. There's talk of a super El Nino coming up this year. What is that, and what do you think that will mean in North America, but also here in Europe?
So El Nino is the warm phase of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which is a naturally occurring climate pattern which happens in the Pacific Ocean, which causes changes in ocean temperatures and weather around the world. Because we're likely to have this super El Nino, we're going to have a very big change in different parts of the world. So in North America in particular, we're going to see an increase in heat waves, but also an increase in heavy rain. We're going to see a change to the hurricane systems. We're going to see some parts of the affected regions in North America having severe drought, whereas others are going to get heavy rain. And it all depends on how El Nino plays out. The reason we have a super El Nino is it's a naturally occurring thing that is now building on a higher baseline of global warming than we've ever had before. And therefore, it exacerbates the effect of El Nino. So it's going to alter rainfall patterns. It's going to reduce hurricane activity. It's going to change winter weather. It's seriously going to affect agriculture. And in particular, urban areas in some parts are going to be very heavily affected with heat stress, heat stroke, and that sort of thing.
All right. Well, it's a story we're going to have to keep talking about then. Thank you so much, Professor Ian Williams, for us here on Around the World.